Hello everyone and welcome to today's discussion on why sustainability is essential for the future of hospitality. I'm Sarah Hedley Hymers. I'm the Editorial Director of Connecting Travel, which is based in the Middle East. It's the sister title of Travel Weekly, a travel trade publication. And my guests today are, we have Noelle, Homsy, co-founder of ENVI Lodges. We have Richard Williamson, Chief Commercial Officer of Considerate. We have Omar Issa, Director of Strategy at Hospitality. And we have Maher Abou Nasr, Vice President of Operations in Saudi Arabia for IHG Hotels. Welcome everybody to the stage. Thank you for joining me. And if I could just ask each of you to introduce yourselves and to tell us a little bit about your role within your company, and then we'll begin our discussion. Maher, if I could start with you.
Sure. My name is Maher Abou Nasr. I'm the Vice President of Operations for KSA, for IHG Hotels and Resorts, basically in charge of the operation of IHG in this country.
Hello, my name is Omar Issa, and I'm heading the strategy department at Dur Hospitality. Been with Dur proudly since 2015, and I see the overall execution of the strategy and most importantly, the strategic initiatives.
Hi, I'm Richard Williamson. I'm one of the three directors of Considerate Group, and Considerate Group is a sustainability consultancy focused specifically on the hospitality sector, and within hospitality also on operational implementation of sustainability. We have offices in London, Munich and New York, and we've been busy on projects here in Saudi Arabia and looking to build on that opportunity.
Hi everyone, I'm Noelle Homsy. I'm the co-founder of ENVI Lodges. ENVI is a luxury experiential lodge brand and management company that was launched last year from the GCC. We operate lodges that are immersed in nature in remote destinations, and we follow high levels of sustainability.
Thank you all, and thank you again for joining us today. Now, before we look to the future, I just want to establish what all of the brands on the stage today are doing for sustainability at the moment. So, Maher, if we could start with you, if you could tell us what measures you've taken for sustainability goals so far.
Absolutely. Our focus on sustainability is not new for IHG. It has been a long-standing commitment for our company. In fact, it underpins our strategy and helps us change our ways of working, improve our ways of working. Now, of course, with the pandemic, there's been more urgency on this matter, and we've realized that it's no longer acceptable for us to just wait for government legislation and policy to act. We needed to act as an industry and as a company. So as such, in 2021, we've launched our Journey to Tomorrow, which is a long-term action plan that focuses on sustainability matters. It focuses on three main areas: our people, so basically taking care of the well-being of our employees, diversity and inclusion, and pushing the human rights agendas in every one of our hotels. The second area is our community, where we, be it direct financial aid through disaster relief or through developing training programs for the community that will bring more long-term economical value for the communities. And the third aspect, which is more relevant to our discussion today, is our planet, with focus on several matters, mainly on reducing our carbon emissions. And that could be through reducing the reliance on energy, raising awareness on water usage, bulk amenities, and in 2019 we were the first company that announced that we're moving away from single-use amenities to bulk amenities. And last but not least, our focus on reducing waste in our food production. And now we're relying on technology to help us measure our waste with the intention of reducing it.
And this is a 10-year plan.
Correct.
That IHG have laid out, and you've already started. What has the success rate been so far?
Great. I mean, the biggest part is raising awareness and bringing all kinds of efforts towards those matters. We've started reducing waste, for example. You've heard in the other panel, Haytham mentioned that we had hotels that have reduced 65,000 meals per year. So that's great. In terms of money, maybe it's not a big wow, but in terms of reducing carbon emission, it's a massive step forward. And of course...
And is that with the company, is it Winnow?
That's with Winnow, correct. It's an artificial intelligence company that relies on technology to help us measure seamlessly our waste management.
So is that increasing profitability if you're reducing waste, I assume?
Absolutely. We don't look at Winnow as a profitability kind of tool. For us, it's doing the right thing for the environment. It's reducing waste, which is waste that should be used somewhere else and help the planet. So if you invest in Winnow, for sure, the bottom line is going to be in the positive. But that's not the purpose for it. It's just doing the right thing for our planet.
And Green Engage, is that another, is that a way to measure? Can you tell us about Green Engage,
Absolutely.
what it involves and how you've actioned that?
So Green Engage is a much older system for IHG. And we've realized in our 6,000 hotels, there were brilliant people that came up with great ideas to reduce, to reduce the carbon emissions, basically. And we realized that they were not spread across all of our properties. So we grouped them together in a platform called Green Engage. There are around 200 initiatives there. And we made it a standard for the company for all the hotels to use. And we now measure all the usage, all the implementation of Green Engage initiatives in our hotels. Now we're taking another step further. We partnered with Schneider Electric to, in building an above property system that helps all the leadership to track each and every hotel, how they're faring against those 200 initiatives.
And can you tell us a bit about that with a partner, or you've done that internally?
Most of the initiatives were done internally with IHG colleagues, but we've partnered across our journey with several partners. We started with Arab, and now we're working with Schneider Electric.
So there's a lot happening
Absolutely.
at IHG. So thank you for sharing your best practices. Omar, can you tell us about the same with Dur Hospitality?
Absolutely. So for us in Dur Hospitality as a developer and operator of hotels, so we have the advantage of having greater control over the value chain, all the way from the design process up to how the guest experiences the property or the hotel. So while we have a lot of initiatives with our existing hotels, we've worked with Winnow, for example, to minimize the food waste.
The food waste.
Exactly.
Artificial intelligence.
Absolutely. And we have installed solar energy systems in a number of hotels. But what I would focus on, speaking strategically, again, and back to the context of being a developer and an operator, our strategic direction is to embed sustainability within the DNA of the property. Not just as an afterthought. It's by purposeful design, making sure that it is something that the guest can experience. And how we achieve this is by, for example, if we take our Marriott DQ Riyadh property, this is a property that was developed with a clear context from day number one. We decided to place sustainability as the driving engine for the design of this hotel. So that hotel was inspired by the Wadi Hanifa topography, and this was also reinforced by adopting the LEED certification. And for those who might not be aware of what this stands for, it stands for the Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. So this helped us to adopt a holistic approach because it covers quite a rigorous criteria all the way from design, construction, operation, and even maintenance of the property. And this was all wrapped in the theme of the Wadi Hanifa. So it stands today as an oasis within the bustling city of Riyadh. All the plants, all the flora is indigenous to the Wadi Hanifa. We're talking about in excess of 6,500 plants within that call this hotel their home, and all of them are indigenous to the Wadi Hanifa.
And they've all been documented at the hotel,
All
correct?
documented,
so people,
correct.
the guests can now come and learn about all of the indigenous plants.
Absolutely.
And I think it was the first hotel in Saudi Arabia to get the gold LED.
The gold lead certification.
certificate.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
that's
so
correct.
congratulations on
Thank you.
that.
Thank you.
That's great. Noelle, ENVI Lodges, very much a sustainable outfit. Can you tell us what you're doing there, leading the way in sustainability?
Of course. So Omar mentioned something very important. He said we're trying to embed sustainability in our DNA. And this is essentially what we are. So ENVI was built on the basis of 7 sustainability pillars, from respecting the land, from protecting wildlife, from engaging guests, which for me is the most important, food, of course, eating responsibly, meaningful, responsible when it comes to resources. So our identity is intricately linked with our commitment to sustainability. At the same time, we're very careful when it comes to choosing who we partner with, who we welcome to the team, who we partner with on the design, on the construction, and most importantly, the owners, because our values need to be aligned from the start. We cannot come back 2 years down the line and tell them, where are the sustainable initiatives that we plan to do? You know, they need to believe in us. They need to believe in the change that needs to happen to the industry for it to happen. Besides that, we are part of the Beyond Green Alliance, which is the world-leading alliance of eco-hotels and resorts, and we adhere to their very strict and rigorous sustainability standards that are aligned with the UN 17 SDGs. And all of our future lodges will be subject to periodic inspections to make sure that we are in compliance based on more than 50 indicators.
Yeah, 50 criteria. And do you know when the periodic inspections happen, or are they unplanned?
Thankfully, they notify us. But, I mean, you can't change so much last minute, right? If you're not doing it right from the start.
You have to live it 24/7.
Yeah, exactly.
24/7.
Yeah.
I really like as well what you said about the people being very intrinsic in this, because what ENVI Lodges wants to do is not only be sustainable, but have guests leave, go home, and practice those sustainable practices in their own home. So it really is about putting that sustainability message into the community beyond the hotel. So, Richard, to you now. You're the man who knows the data. So you've heard what our different hoteliers are doing with regard to their own sustainability plans and goals. Can you give us your views on that, and tell us how Considerate Group would enhance or accelerate that?
Yes, certainly. I'm not going to sort of sit here and criticise people for initiatives. From my perspective, what I'm trying to achieve, or what we're trying to achieve at Considerate, is to make sure that people engage with sustainability, with ESG. So, really from our perspective, I'm delighted to hear the level of engagement we're talking about, and again, the level of engagement I've heard over the last 2 days here in Riyadh. So, Saudi Arabia is engaging with the sustainable agenda. It is fundamental to Vision 2030, and I'm delighted with that. I suppose from our perspective as Considerate, what we are keen to ensure is that that everybody engages with sustainability, and they start to set a baseline, they start to measure, they start to define what a roadmap will look like for the medium term, for the long term. And where we have particular expertise, I suppose, is we've got a combination of hospitality expertise and sustainability expertise, and we work with the hospitality sector, with the individual hotels, as well as at the central level, to implement change at the asset level. And so, data collection, objectivity, measurement, and a roadmap as to how you're going to progress from day one. That, for us, is the critical element. And so, everybody here is talking about objective measures against which they can be, measured, whether that's the Beyond Green Alliance and your 50 criteria, or again, Gold Lead Standard. That's all great. And so, once you start on that journey, I think it becomes reinforcing that you want to progress. And consumers will increasingly expect to see greater engagement. And so communicating with the consumer, again, is another key element. So once you have got, once you've embarked on a sustainability journey, communication, engagement with the local community, engagement with the team at the asset level, those are all key criteria. And from our point of view, we are a B Corp, so we've achieved that level of certification for ourselves, and that helps give us some credibility about helping companies on this journey. We've set ourselves what we consider to be the highest standard, and we are helping others within the hospitality sector to make their own journeys.
Thank you very much, Richard. Very concise. Maher, let's go back to you and talk about government. Should government or the hotels themselves be setting the policies? We've heard Richard say, you've got to have the data, you've got to have that. If you can't have the data, you can't measure it, you can't manage it.
Absolutely.
So where should it come from? Should it come from government or should it come from hotels? What do you think?
This is a tough one, actually. I think that achieving a sustainable hotel operation requires collaboration from all involved, all stakeholders, be it the government, the operators, the industry, experts, consultants, and technology companies. Before regulation, I think we need to reach a certain level of standardization of the metrics that we're talking about. Today, different industries use different measures for their sustainability efforts. Even within the same industry, you see different companies using different measures. And if you look at the data, as Richard was mentioning, and communicating that data, I think agreeing on a format and the kind of measures that we need is very, very important. This is critical for the guests as well, so they know how hotels are doing compared to, I wouldn't say an apple-to-apple, maybe an 80% apple-to-apple comparison when they look at different hotels. But today, it's completely different in terms of metrics. And it's also good for the hotels. They can use this data for their competitive advantage, but it also can give them a roadmap on the areas that they need to focus on. So reaching that level of standardization is critical before we talk about legislation through the government.
And presumably, for the consumer then, it would have to be global rather than just inter-country, because you would want that to be the same across the board, which is the tricky part. Omar,
absolutely.
I think both sides are needed to democratize the adoption of sustainability per se. I think the governmental intervention is essential to establish a baseline across the industry. But as for the case for any kind of regulation, it doesn't leave much room for creativity. So it's great for establishing the baseline, but it's not either or. It's not either the hoteliers should adopt it themselves or should the government intervene. It's actually both. And the creativity always lies within the developers and the operators' hands to create a great narrative, to create a great experience that come to the competitive advantage of the hotel itself. But again, back to the democratization of sustainability, I think governmental intervention and with governmental policy making and regulation, obviously incentive schemes and incentives like tax breaks and similar frameworks should be adopted to encourage the adoption of sustainable practices.
So rewards and incentives can actually help drive this.
Absolutely.
And as ENVI Lodges, as a smaller business, how would you feel about having those targets to be set by government level?
First of all, I agree with what Maher and Omar mentioned. If we look at it, from a high level perspective, government is always plays a major role when it comes to sustainable development, which is through the creation of coherent cross-sectoral policies and legislation which tell us how we should avoid pollution, how we should dispose of our waste, how we should make use of natural resources, and essentially how to protect ecosystems and human rights. But when it comes to hotels, such policies cannot be imposed top-down. It doesn't work without the buy-in of different players that form this industry, which is the hospitality industry. And this is why, just like Maher and Omar said, they need to sit on the same table together. Representatives from hotel operators, representatives from hotel owners, who are going to incur the costs, right? And the legislators should sit together on the same table to come up with a phased action plan that is feasible and that is based on clear targets and KPIs after these targets are standardized. And then the entire industry, the other players can adopt these, this plan, this phased plan, with the help of companies such as Considerate. So this is what I see the plan moving forward in order to convert the existing hotels to become green. Now, obviously, this exercise is much easier for those of us who are, starting fresh, like ENVI Lodges. We're planning for the future, because sustainability is embedded in everything we do. We're not fixing the mistakes that have been happening in the past. And we started by setting our own policies, We started by setting our own policies aligned with global standards, of course, with the guidance of our partners, and we're helping others will do too.
So, Richard, this is literally your area of expertise.
Wow.
So, what do you think of the global measurements in place now? Which do you recommend people follow? Because I'm hearing different terms, different names. Which are the gold standards? Gold lead, SDGs from the UN.
Yep.
What should people be following in the meantime while they're waiting for this phased plan to appear?
Yeah, fine. Well, first of all, I just want to tread a careful line, because I think sort of enabling legislation, European regulation has been very helpful in driving sustainability, and that's kind of been rolled out internationally. And I absolutely agree that too much central regulation is problematic, and at some stage the industry needs to take over and actually decide what is relevant to them. But I think central regulation and sort of involvement of government to lead the process, to set people off on the ESG agenda, I think has been critical. So I'm fully supportive of that. In terms of I suppose what we look at, we think that the 17 UN SDGs are the gold standard. Things like LEED certification is absolutely right for looking at the building fabric. We tend to sort of look at operational improvement. And different criteria are relevant there. There is a plethora of different certifications out there. There's a plethora of different frameworks out there. And so what we tend to do is we tend to work with the hotel group, and work out what their objectives are, and then sort of work with them to agree a relevant framework. But things like GRESB and Green Key are certainly relevant certifications that we sort of look at on a regular basis.
I heard a remarkable statistic that only half of the buildings that will exist in 2060 are actually present and existing now. So we have a massive opportunity with all of the new buildings, which obviously hotels occupy, to really make a change between now and 2060. But what about the existing hotels? Richard, to you again, what do you recommend existing hotels do to increase their sustainability in future?
Well, very simply, from what I've been saying earlier, we believe it's about measurement. So, we have a data platform, and there are plenty of data platforms in the market, but essentially start to build up a body of data against which you can measure performance. So you establish your baseline, you establish your goals, your roadmap, and then you measure progress on that journey. And that can involve everything from I suppose for the CFO, operational savings, savings in energy, switching off air conditioning, water reduction, single-use plastics. There's some very obvious targets there. But again, sort of broadening out the agenda in terms of social inclusion, about working with the local community, about giving back to the local community, about sourcing food locally where possible. So there are many, many different criteria which can be defined, and having defined them, you can work out, right, I'm sort of working with 50% of food sourced locally. Over the next 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, I want to increase that by sort of definable percentages, up to 75%, up to 100%. So that is our objective, and from an operational perspective, there are easy wins in terms of helping the CFO reduce the operating costs of the hotel. But it's also then about communicating wins to the staff. It's about staff retention, as well as engagement with the ultimate customer, and communicating that, making it transparent, putting it on the website, allowing the consumer to actually engage with what you're doing. You're telling a story about the local hotel, and communicate that to potential future visitors.
And then looking to the future and talking to our hoteliers, I work a lot with travel agents through our trade publication, and some of the feedback is, we're not really being asked about, it's not a decider, sustainability, it isn't a decider yet. But that sentiment is really starting to change globally. Whether the Middle East is slightly behind in that, I'm not sure. Noelle, what do you think about consumer sentiment towards sentimentality? Where are we at, and where will we be in a year's time?
First of all, it's not true that it's not a decider, and there are tons and tons of research and studies that have been published in the past 1 to 2 years, one of which, for example, is Expedia's latest study with Wakefield Research that surveyed 11,000 consumers in 11 countries. And if you look into the study, you would see that 90% of these surveyed consumers have confirmed that they search for sustainable options when they make their travel decisions and when they book. But it doesn't stop here. What's more important, if you dig deeper, is that 7 out of 10 consumers, which is 70%, that's huge, 7 out of 10 consumers in the past year have avoided a travel destination or have avoided an accommodation option because they had doubts that what is being said is not real, that the commitment to sustainability and to sustainable practices is not real. And this tells us a lot about the current and the future traveler, how sophisticated this traveler has become. We can't greenwash anymore. Gone are the days of greenwashing where you just say, we're not using plastic straws, or please hang your towels if you don't want them to be washed every day. I mean, this is great, of course, but it's not enough. It shouldn't stop here. And consumers are starting to understand, and they can't be fooled anymore. Unless you're genuine, unless you're doing the right change, unless you're building with their needs in mind, then you're not going to survive the next 10 years in hospitality.
Omar, are you finding this to be true at hospitality?
Yes, and it depends. It's different for different countries. Back to Richard's point, people from Western countries, European Union, who are very much have a certain maturity of the regulation and the widespread of the concept of the sustainability, but. So yeah, it's different for people in different countries, but with time going forward, I think this gap would be bridged, because ultimately what sustainability addresses, it addresses issues that are quintessential for our being, for the future generations. So issues like climate change and emissions. We saw, for example, if we take a proxy for example from the automotive industry. The automotive industry isn't the only contributor to emissions, to the emissions issue. Hotels contribute around 2 or 5%, between 2 and 5% globally. So the momentum is coming through. It's going to come, as Noelle mentioned. If you're getting away with it today, you're probably not gonna get away with it in the future. The sentiment is definitely moving towards the consumer sentiment is definitely moving into the quintessentiality of sustainability. And another aspect to look at it is it doesn't have to be so rigid when you communicate it to the customer. Even this is one of the walls and one of the difficulties of how you communicate your practices and your efforts with the customer. So this is where the creativity side comes in, and when you move it, when you look at it from the creative perspective and put it in a creative context, this is where it automatically moves. For example, that, okay, I'm going to Riyadh city, I want to stay in a property, for example, that has a nice courtyard, which happens to be, for example, a very sustainable site. So this is where, you know, we can look at it as a paradigm shift from the consumer's perspective.
And Maher, are you finding the same with IHG? I love what you said about you can get away with it today, perhaps, but you won't be getting away with it tomorrow. Yeah. Is that the sentiment at IHG?
Absolutely, except that we're not getting away with it today even. I agree with Noelle and Omar. Definitely the level of awareness for the customer, for the traveler, is increasing. In fact, we conducted our own survey for IHG guests, and 83% came back reporting that they would make accommodation decisions based on the sustainability efforts in the property that they are visiting. And what's more interesting is that those guests are prepared to pay 31% more on accommodation that meets this need for them. So it's definitely a very loud and clear approach from our guests. If you look at Booking.com, for example, they label hotels now with a sustainability badge. Google.com as well does something very similar with an eco-friendly badge. And our hotels tell us, the multinational clients that we have, when they send us RFPs, there is a sustainability section there. They want to know what this hotel is doing for them to go and visit. And 90% of those companies have made public announcements regarding their sustainability efforts. So they're not going to go and stay in a hotel that doesn't do anything regarding sustainability.
So it is front of mind. Absolutely. When booking, and even when it's more expensive, people are moving forward. Absolutely. Well, thank you all for your insights. Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask any of our panel today? Just to let you know, we've done feature-length interviews with all of our panelists. You can read that on connectingtravel.com. 2 of them are live, 2 of them will be live from tomorrow. And thank you all for being with us today. And thank you to our panelists. Big round of applause.
Thank you, Sarah.
For your time.